So we just had a weekend retreat on standing up for compassion. And in one of the sessions, I recall Venerable Jigme mentioned that all of us have had experiences of suffering as children, and often how we see, how these experience suffering is responded to can shape how we perceive compassion, what that response to suffering might look like. And when she said this, for some reason, this memory popped into my mind of when I was 8 and when my sister was 4. And we were playing at having a tea party. And then my sister tried to put a small porcelain cup into her mouth. So, of course, I immediately stopped her and grabbed the cup. And she got very upset. And then she proceeded to climb onto me and bit my cheek. So, of course, I yelled. And yes, my poor grandmother came over and, had to address the two very unhappy children. And then later that night, I was sitting in the dining room doing my homework. And then my father was with my sister in the bedroom that she and I share. And he started to admonish her. My father very rarely raised his voice, but he was really giving it to her. And at some point, I think he took out a plastic ruler and he started to hit her on the legs. And just sitting outside, hearing that, and of course my sister started to cry, I just thought, hearing my sister get punished feels so much worse than when she bit my cheek. Yeah, and that memory just really stuck with me, that if someone has harmed you, them getting punished does absolutely nothing to necessarily relieve your own pain. And it actually just made me feel a lot worse. Yeah. And also it was interesting that years later, my dad said that, he felt so awful caning my sister that he just resolved never to do that to his kids ever again. And he didn't. So that memory just stuck with me, just how to respond to suffering. That if you are suffering, harming someone else does not help. And I think too, because of this childhood experience, I had like a really strong aversion to corporal punishment. But most unfortunately, I had to witness that as a school teacher, to my great surprise, actually, because I had gone to a girls' school and a certain type of school. So when I wound up teaching in a public school that was kind of at the bottom of the school rankings, or, there was a lot of problems with the school culture. There were students involved in street gangs. And so in Singapore, it is, the school can do corporal punishment on boys of a certain age. And often it's for extremely serious offenses that, they would be charged for a crime as an adult, for example. But since it's the school that caught them, they're going to handle it within the school. Yeah. So very early in my teaching career, maybe like 2 months or so when I was at that school, one day we were told, there's going to be a public caning during assembly. Yes, and that was my response. But, it would seem to be like totally normal. I was just like, huh? I'm like, can I please not show up? I didn't say that. But, I couldn't not go because I was on the staff, right? And my job was to be all the staff, you're supposed to be there to maintain discipline, to make sure that the children in my homeroom class did not try and take photos with their phone or laugh. Yeah, so I had to go. So what had happened was there were 5 boys who were caught for vandalizing school property. There was one girl too, but so she wasn't caned. She had to wear like a big vest and go and collect trash for about a week. So also this kind of public humiliation. So all 1,000 of us were sitting there watching these boys go on stage. They were 15. And, there's a table set up, you have to bend over, and then the discipline master puts a book above the back, the lower back, to protect the spine. And then he has like a bamboo cane, and it's a bit performative too, so it's like whack, in front of the whole school. So, I know, the whole room was just, I don't know, it was probably the longest and worst 20 minutes of my life, one of. And that said, the discipline master is not an evil man. He was very well loved by the students. Everyone knew he genuinely cared so much for them. He had dedicated his whole life to working in the education service. But this was his view of what compassion looks like. How to prevent someone from causing themselves and others more suffering. And I remember the school principal said to me before, I'd rather we cane them in school than they get caned by the state. Because also corporal punishment for adult males is happens in Singapore, and that now it's not a bamboo cane, it's a big whip basically, and it can be addressed. It can be given as the penalty for everything from rape and burglary to overstaying your visa more than 90 days, as I found out later. So, don't even think about it. So years later, also as part of my job in the government, I had the opportunity to visit a medium security prison, and we saw the rack where people would get put and hit. And at that time, there was someone in a holding cell waiting for his turn, and he was just terrified. And the policeman definitely was rubbing it in during the tour, so that was really quite difficult to witness. So I think all these memories were coming up too because I've been working on the incarcerated people's database in the past week, so that's very much on my mind, this whole idea of punishment and what it means to help people and help, to overcome their mistakes and reintegrate into society. And so we have a prison outreach program that's very much has that as its mission. And one of the things that we do is send out a quarterly newsletter to over 1,000 people in the prison system in the US. And so one task we have to do is to check every single name in that database 4 times a year, look for them in the prison system to make sure the person is there, or if they've been released, we can take them out of the listing, and to check if the address is correct so that they will actually receive the newsletter. So just going through that list, for some reason, has been very healing to me. I mean, in this context, just making the effort to read each person's name, right? Thinking, this is a human being. No matter what they have done, they have complex lives. They have family who love them, who care for them. I don't know their story, but I want to read their name just to remember this is a human being. And I'm going to make sure it's spelled right, so they're going to get it. The letter, the Dharma dispatch. So reading names. And one thing that really got to me this time was, seeing someone named Sunshine. You just think of all the hopes and dreams that parents have when they have children. It's like, here is this man named Sunshine. When he was born into this world, his parents saw him as their sunshine. Things didn't quite turn out that way. Later on in life, but he's still Sunshine, So just behind every single person's name, there is this human story. And then in some cases, you get to see a photo. So of course, there are photos of the young men who are looking tough, like, what kind of expression. What really gets to me is the pictures of people grinning. They're living in some really difficult conditions. They're not happy every day, but maybe it just represents the human desire to connect. Here you are, you're getting your mug shot taken, and it's like, there's a very genuine, bright smile. I'm just like, wow, okay. And then, of course, there are the people who just look dazed and confused. Another one that got to me was pictures of the young men who have tattoos on their faces that make it look like they're crying all the time. Like here, It's like, wow, they just look so sad, constantly sad. It just makes me wonder what kind of suffering they've been through. So it becomes like a very powerful meditation, really, as you look at every single person in that list. And of course, there's a deadline. We're trying to finish checking this list. But, to just take the time with every name and to see, there's a human being behind this. And, even though I can't fix the prison system, I know there are many things that need to be improved. And I don't have those conditions. I don't have those skills. But the one thing I can do in this life is, to make sure your name is spelled right and to check that your address is correct. And to make sure that you get the Dharma dispatch, because it's the Dharma that's going to help this person to change their life. Hopefully work with their mind. That's what will bring about some genuine transformation that I have confidence in. So that just seems like such a much more hopeful and beneficial endeavor when someone who has harmed someone else, instead of hitting them to make them realize their mistake and change, we offer a totally different alternative, a tool for them to look inward and overcome that suffering. So that is just so profound and then very healing for me as a witness, to see there are other options and that I can do something to help to bring that to pass. And then finally, I just wanted to share that during winter retreat, we received an email from someone who had been released, and they were writing to us to ask if they could volunteer with us. But this one line that got me in that email was this person said, you know, I used to be incarcerated in this prison, and then I was moved to this other place, and you all found me. And so I still got the Dharma dispatch. I mean, it was so simple. It was just a few sentences, but they're like, you found me. You know, someone took the time to look for me and found me and made sure I received the Dharma. So I just really rejoice in all the good work our prison program team does and has been doing for decades. Like, it started with 1 or 2 volunteers in the 90s. And of course, Venerable Jigme was one of those volunteers. Diane brought that whole program here to the Abbey, and now it has a full team of 5 of us. Yeah, I'm kind of a peripheral member, you know, but it's a full team that now really helps to bring the Dharma to so many people. Yeah, so I'm very grateful for this kind of healing work. Yeah, that kind of happened by surprise in the past week.